Hello and welcome to another section of Principles and Practice of Procurement. We are the second section of the first unit, which is talking about the role of procurement and supply in organizations. By the end of this section, we should be able to explain the typical proportion of cost accounted for by procurement of goods, the role of procurement and supply professionals, how sustainability in procurement and supply is ensured, and finally, the roles of staff with devolved responsibilities for procurement. So the typical proportion of cost accounted for by procurement of goods. Gone are the days the largest expenses borne by a typical manufacturer by far was the cost of wages, right? Most manufacturing organizations or industries were heavily labor intensive, with most of their manufacturing processes being carried out manually by both by skilled and unskilled labor. So we because of this large workforce, because of this labor intensive of organizations, most of our revenue expenses were going to paying these workers, this labor. So that's why we have organizations being labor intensive. Labor accounted for most of our expenses at the end of the financial period. Realize most of our monies or most of our revenues were going to these paying wages, right? So because of this reason, for this reason, procurement had little or no role at all to play in organizations. However, these days, most manufacturing organizations are moving from labor intensive to capital intensive. Instead of employing people to carry out activities manually, we employ machines. We just need about one or two skilled people to operate these machines, and then the machines are going to do all our works for us with little or no defect. So instead of our most of our money is going into paying wages of these labor, our monies are now going into procurement of machines. So now procurement has a very big role to play in organizations, unlike the olden days. So now we are saying that as procurement professionals, it's your duty to know where, how, when to get these machines, the right machines at the right time, the right quality, the right quantity, and everything. Of course, with the aid of the user department or some technical or specialized persons who know much about these machines than the procurement people, they come on board together to help us know each the functions of these machines, what they can do, and then we decide on the right one to go for, which is going to help us get the value for money in the long run. So now procurement accounts for a higher proportion of goods. Most of our money, most of the organizations at the end of financial period realize that most of our revenues is going into buying or procuring machines or these capital intensive goods instead of going into labor like it used to, right? So gone are the days where procurement had no role or little to play in organizations. Now we have a very big role because procurement accounts for the higher proportion of their organization's revenue at the end of the financial period. It's procurement that is responsible for procuring these machines, these very expensive technical machines. So it's the duty of these procurement professionals to make sure that these monies that has been entrusted to them has been spent wisely in order to achieve value for money. We shouldn't forget in public procurement, everything we do is driven towards achieving value for money. All right. Procurement and supply professionals have some roles we play in organizations. We're going to briefly go through some of these roles. The first role we have here is the clerical and administrative tasks. Of course, as procurement professionals, we have to perform some of these clerical and administrative tasks. For instance, it's our duty to keep records of documents coming and leaving our unit or our department, right? Some documents will have to be with the purchase order document, the inventory document, tender quotation documents, all other documents that comes to us or leave our side. We have to keep records of them. It's our duty to make sure we are able to store these documents at the appropriate time, place, so that just when there is a need for these documents, we're able to get them to the right authorities when needed. For instance, the reason to do this is because sometimes you have periodic audits, being it annually, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever. When these auditors come and request for these documents, we should be able to get these documents to them without any hassle. All right. And it's also our duty to be able to retrieve these data that we've stored at any point in time with smooth running of the department. All right. So Aside the clerical and administrative tasks, another role of procurement and supply function is the negotiation and buying. Of course, negotiation and buying will have to be one of the core activities of a purchasing function or of a procurement department. We are in business mostly or mainly to make sure we get the right requirements or right procurement, right buying for our organizations. We can't just go to the market like any other person, like a normal person will go to the market to buy. As procurement professionals, we can't do that. Organization is paying for our skills. They expect us to be able to save them some cost. So if a normal person goes to market to buy and then goes through a certain process, they don't expect us to go through that same process. Then there wouldn't be a need to spend all that money employing us when they can just use a lesser amount to employ an ordinary person. That's why we need to negotiate. We just don't negotiate just the cost, but then other aspects of a contract. We can negotiate on quality, we can negotiate on quantity, we can negotiate on delivery time, we can negotiate on delivery terms, we can negotiate. There are so many terms that we can negotiate on other than cost. So if a normal person is going to the market and then is willing to pay 50 cedis for something to be delivered this week, we as procurement professionals can go to market and then pay 40 cedis for the same thing to be delivered today and not this week. Even though we are paying less, we are in this case we didn't only negotiate the price or the cost, we've also negotiated the delivery time. This is a role procurement and supply professionals perform in organization, and we're supposed to hold it in high esteem. The next term is expediting, chasing suppliers to ensure they deliver on time. Of course, as procurement professionals, it's our duty to make sure our suppliers always, at every point in time, meet their delivery schedules before or the time they promised. We can't just award a contract to them and then go and sit in our offices or in our homes and expect that they will they will deliver on their promise. No, we have to do everything in our power to make sure they actually fulfill their promise or their side of the contract. It doesn't necessarily mean always going to them, picking your phones, calling them, and all that. No, you can actually include some terms in your contract to make sure you force them to deliver the contract their promise on time or even before time if they need be. So expediting basically is making sure your suppliers are able to deliver on time or even before time when there is a need for that, right? And then finally, we have the management of the purchasing function. Of course, it's our duty as procurement professionals to manage the whole procurement function. We have to be able to manage our suppliers. If there is conflict between our suppliers and any of our members, we're able to manage it. We should be able to deal with specific problems in the supply and commodity market. We should be able to know when an item will be available and then when it will not be, and then when it's the right time to actually get a particular item, when it's just managing anything and everything in our function or our supply chain, right? That is a role of procurement and supply professionals. We can't have procurement and supply professionals in an organization and then ask a different unit to be managing our supply chain or to be forecasting when there is going to be um a particular item or material on the market, when a particular supply is going to be on the market or not. No, it is our duty as procurement and supply professionals to know these things. That's why organizations are paying us to do. Our next subsection is the sustainability in procurement and supply. Sustainable procurement is an approach that takes economic, environmental, and social sustainability into account when making decisions. It's about looking at what purchased items are made of, where they come from, how they are made, and by whom, how they will be used, and whether they are in fact necessary. So, as procurement and supply professionals, we cannot just wake up and buy anything. This we've established in the earlier sections. Also, we have to make sure that in purchasing whatever we purchase, we suppliers or whoever we purchase from or whatever we do in organization, we satisfy the three pillars or principles of sustainability, which is the social, economic, and environment. These are the three pillars of sustainability. So let's take them one after the other. So with the social sustainability, we have to make sure the suppliers we are getting our requirements or materials from are, for instance, not using child labor. They are paying their workers the minimum wage. They are not doing anything that's to the detrimental of their workers or workforce. And then they are not with the environment, they are not just discharging or disposing of whatever is harmful to the environment, to the people, onto the environment without caring about anything. We have to make sure they dispose of things at the right place and time. We have to make sure whatever they do It's the economic aspects of their country, their suppliers, and everybody in their society is being catered for, as well as the organization. Even they have to make profits, but then with the intent of making profits, they shouldn't only concentrate on making profits and then ignoring other aspects of sustainability. We can't also just wake up and then produce anything. We have to make sure whatever we are buying, as there is really a need for it, because we used materials we got from our land, all right, our natural resources, which we know resources are limited. We have to make sure there is really a need for these things before we just wake up and do anything. We have to make sure whatever we are doing, it's going to cater for our needs, as well as cater for the needs of the future generations that are coming. It's not that we just only care about our needs, satisfying our needs and ignoring the needs of the future generation. We can't do that. If we want to be sustainable, we think about all these things before we make decisions. Next, we have the role of staff with devolved responsibilities for procurement. So some organizations have the typical procurement unit in organizations. Some too, we delegate these roles to other people because of certain reasons best known to organizations, right? So first, we have the centralization and decentralization of purchasing. With the centralization of purchasing or centralized purchasing, this is a system in which one department manages the purchasing of goods and services for the entire organization. So, like a typical organization, we will have one department or one unit set for procurement. And then this department is it's the responsibility of this department to make sure they get the requirements or goods that the whole organization, all other units need. It's the responsibility of this purchasing department to get it for us, right? That's the centralization. The procurement is centralized at one point. However, with the decentralization of purchasing, this is when other various departments are allowed to procure whatever they need without the need for a centralized procurement office. So, um, accounting, marketing people need something, they are allowed to buy it themselves. Accounting people need something, they are allowed to buy it themselves. If there is a need for the procurement function to come in to source for these or source for these suppliers for them to the right suppliers where they can get the items for, then that will be done. But then the bottom line is the various departments get whatever they need themselves. They don't need to involve the centralized or the main procurement office. So this is the clear distinction between the centralized and the decentralized purchasing. With the centralized purchasing, one department as responsible for the purchasing of requirements for the whole organization. But then with the decentralized purchasing, each unit or each department in the organization purchase their own requirements. They purchase whatever they need themselves. Then finally, we have the part-time purchasers. So unlike a purchasing where we have one centralized department procurement office that's in it purchasing for us, we have another some people call the part-time purchasers. These people are not part of our or are not members of our purchasing function, and then their main activities are nothing or have nothing to do with purchasing. However, because of one or two reasons, probably because they have the expertise the procurement function may not have, we employ them on their services when purchasing something. So, for instance, we need a laptop in the organization, right? The procurement department, we don't really have much knowledge about laptops. So, we get someone, an IT person, someone from our IT department or any other IT person who has the much knowledge or in-depth knowledge about laptops to come on board and then buy these laptops or this laptop that we need for us. So this person's activities or duties has nothing to do with purchasing. But then because of one or two reasons, we employ this person to buy or purchase for us. These people are termed as part-time purchasers. That brings us to the end of the section 2 of unit 1. So by way of summary, we have explained the typical proportion of cost accounted for by procurement of goods and the role of procurement and supply professionals. We have also looked at how sustainability in procurement and supply is ensured and the roles of staff with devolved responsibilities for procurement. Thank you.